time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
I think sometimes Virginia, because they play slow on offense, they don't get enough credit for how good their players are. I think sometimes everybody gets so into their scheme, but you don't win 17 out of 18 ACC games unless you have really good players. And they're big, they're strong, they're physical at every position, they're athletic, and they're obviously very sound fundamentally. So they just do a lot of really good things. They're difficult to play against.
We're above 500, neutral court, so our RPI was in the high 60s, if I'm not mistaken. RPI might even get better. From an RPI standpoint, strength of schedule, good wins, quadrant wins, we're above 500. I know teams with RPIs in the 80s and bad losses have gotten into the NIT. We fit the criteria to be able to, but it's not my decision.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome into Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network here on a beautiful but chilly Friday afternoon in the Palmetto State. We come to you from various spots around the globe. Phil Kornbluth here in downtown Columbia tonight with Brian Leonard only, the Professor Tom Hayes. It's in his contract. He gets an early weekend start on us here tonight, so he is not with us on Sports Talk. Will Pelagic once again stationed courtside at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. It's serious time now for the ACC tournament. Clemson and Virginia at the top of the hour in one semifinal, and then round 3 for this season, Duke at North Carolina. That's a great Final Four for the ACC tournament right there. You've got, of course, the number 1 team in the country. You've got the upstart Clemson Tigers, and you've got the true blue bloods and the bitter rivalry of Duke and North Carolina being played out in New York City. Should be a lot of fun tonight watching the ACC action. SEC action continuing this afternoon with quarterfinal round action in St. Louis. And, boy, what a day for Alabama and Cameron Sexton. They blow out Auburn in the second half, scoring 50 points in the second half to win and advancing to the semifinals, 81-63, that final. The other game of the day thus far in the St. Louis, Georgia, Kentucky, wrapping up just a little while ago, and it was Kentucky winning that one 62-49 to move on. Last night, South Carolina loses in the quarterfinals to Arkansas. Now the Gamecocks will wait and see if they get an NIT bid. We're not going to play NIT bracketology here on Sports Talk because it is the NIT. I was just thinking about it. Now, maybe I haven't seen it. But, you know, I've been in the CLA a lot, and you look up in the rafters and you see the banners for the Final Four and the banners for the NCAA tournament appearances and for the women as well. I'm just trying to remember, do they even have banners hanging for their 2 NIT championships? Let's bring in Will Pelagic. Maybe he's looked up into the banners at the Colonial Life Arena. You recall seeing banners for their NIT championships?
I don't know if there's a banner, Corn, but I know that there's a nice big picture of it in the back in the media room. I don't know if the banner is up there, though. That's not necessarily something you want to – that's not a big bragging point.
Well, that's my point. That's my point. That's why we're not going to sit here and play NIT bracketology, because apparently even the school doesn't consider the 2 championships that it won back-to-back much to talk about.
When you are Mr. 69 or Mr. 65, as it was back in those days, it's not exactly something that is looked upon rather favorably.
No, but they should. I mean, it's part of your history. You do have trophies for it. Those 2 teams were very good teams who could have done well in the NCAA tournament had they not suffered a tough SEC tournament loss along the way. But anyway, let's turn our attention to your game, Clemson and Virginia. And we all know what happened when these teams met in the regular season in Charlottesville. The Tigers suffered a big beatdown in the second half there. What can they do differently to turn that thing in their favor tonight?
Well, I think we kind of touched on it a little bit last night, Corn, but the way I think Clemson needs attack Virginia is they can't be passive with it. Too many times in that second half, they settled for guarded perimeter jump shots, and that led to basically what Virginia wanted out of Clemson. They wanted Clemson to try and settle for jump shots. They wanted Clemson to not necessarily be able to penetrate it inside the lane. I think the one thing that Clemson needs to do is they need to get to the free throw line. I know that they are a big perimeter shooting team and they are a big three-point shooting team and they live and die by that three, but they have to know that that is not the formula to winning against the Cavaliers, because they bait you into thinking that you are open, but in reality, they close you off at the pass and they make you take tough shots on the perimeter, and that is something that Clemson cannot afford to do too much today because of the fact that they just had that bad experience at the JPJ earlier this year where, like you said, they only scored 36. Yeah,
but I like the way Clemson's guards are playing right now. They had a terrific game yesterday, the three of them playing well together, moving the basketball, making the extra pass, and knocking down the open shots. If those three guys are on their game and then Eli Thomas handles the boards okay and gives them 8 or 10 points, they get a little bit off their bench today. I see no reason why they can't hang in there with Virginia and make this a good basketball game with a chance to win late in the second half.
Well, not only that, Corn, but the thing that made me encouraged yesterday, it wasn't the things that those three guys did. It was what somebody who was off the beaten path did. The thing that you need in the NCAA tournament and especially in conference tournaments as well, in order to have success, is you need somebody from the periphery to be able to step up and show out. And I think A.J. Oliver doing that yesterday is a very, very good sign for Clemson, because it brings you somebody who isn't necessarily on film, somebody even like an Amir Sims who has gotten more time with the departure of Dante Grantham, not the departure, but the injury of Dante Grantham. Mm-hmm. That is at least something that also can give Clemson a boost. I think you need to find – you need to get those three guys their points. They're going to get theirs, but you need people outside of those three to be able to give you a representative number so that when you need to get points in the grinded out part of the game, you can do so outside of those three guys.
Well, I can guarantee you, well, I shouldn't guarantee, but I am reasonably sure of a couple of things. Number one, Clemson will make more than 6 field goals in the second half, as they did in that loss at Virginia. They were 6 of 24 in the second half. Here's the other most amazing stat from that game. Clemson shot 4 free throws, 3 of them by Gabe DeVoe. Sims had the other one. Now, Sims, to me, is sort of Clemson's secret weapon. You know, he's getting better and better, and he's playing with a lot of moxie out there, and I think he can give them a lot today. He did start in that game in Charlottesville. He played 25 minutes. He scored 9 points. I think they can expect to get more out of him. But their guard trio in that game against Virginia that they lost, DeVoe had 11, Mitchell did not score, and Reed had 6. I think you can expect maybe double, if not triple, the combined output from those three tonight.
And the thing about that first game, and Brad Brownell talked about it yesterday after the victory over Boston College, is that was basically a conversion of a lot of very bad things for Clemson. They had short prep time, and they also were coming off the injury to Dante Grantham, which was just a crushing blow. They hadn't played a game together. They had barely practiced together with that look, and they've had to tweak their offense ever since then to try and not only get more space for their 3 guards, but also find out exactly where, Amir Sims and David Skara can be their best when playing that 4 position. And I know that he does not like to use, Brad does not like to use Mark Donnell and Eli Thomas on the floor together because of the fact that Eli gets himself in foul trouble and that it really limits them on defense because Donnell is limited in that area. But I wouldn't be shocked if you get to a point where you need some instant offense to see Donnell on the floor at the 4 along with Thomas, because of the fact that offense, as always, against a team like Virginia can come at a premium, especially if you are having those 3 guys, like you mentioned, possibly not on their best game.
All right, really looking forward to it. We'll get back to you in just a moment, and Bill Pollack will join us from Missouri after the break as well. So we're looking forward to everything happening in the basketball world. Baseball, Clemson and Georgia Tech, ACC opener. They are in the bottom of the 8th at Doug Kingsmore. It's a 2-2 game. Tech just tying it up in the top of the 8th inning. 2-2 is the score there. And Martin Truex Jr. has won the pole out in Phoenix. We'll have our visit with Monty Dutton coming up later tonight. We'll do some golf as well. with George Bryan III and a whole bunch more. Football and recruiting coming too. Back in a moment.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
A great Friday afternoon here on Sports Talk, heading into the weekend, and it's going to be a great sports weekend. We welcome all of you tuning over to us from elsewhere. Glad you're with us. If you missed the beginning of the program, that's okay. We'll catch you up on some things. We have Willie P. up at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn awaiting the ACC semifinals tonight. Great pairing, Clemson and Virginia, North Carolina and Duke. Going to be a lot of fun. Tigers trying to make it to the championship game for just the third time in their history. So they're trying to crash the party up there with three other teams that are used to being in that situation. Let's see if the Tigers can rise up and get it done tonight. And we've got two more quarterfinal round games coming tonight in the SEC tournament. In fact, let's go to Missouri. Welcome in Bill Pollock, sports director of Missouri Net, who's been covering the SEC and, of course, was covering the Gamecocks for us until they bowed out last night. So before we talk about what's coming up tonight, let's talk about last night, Bill. Your take on the Gamecocks. It was a game that was there for the taking for them, but they just could not make the key defensive play, couldn't come up with the loose ball, and they let one get away that they possibly could have stolen from Arkansas.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They just didn't do enough of the little things, and you could really sense that Frank Martin was frustrated about that. But, the one thing that really hurt them in the first half was just the free throw discrepancy. Georgia, I'm trying to remember. There's so many numbers, and after such a long weekend, but I want to say they had, it was close to 20 attempts. It was just crazy. And then South Carolina stepped up the defensive intensity. They were able to get Arkansas into a half-court game, and when you get them into a half-court game, they are a completely different team in a negative way. They just did not move. They became complacent, and there were a couple of opportunities where South Carolina, if they could have just gotten over that hump, but you see it so many times in college basketball. You come back from that 12, 15-point deficit, you get it to 3, 2, maybe even tie the game, and you can't get over that hump. And that's what happened last night for South Carolina. And then 4 words that you never want to hear your coach say at the end of a tournament, we fit the criteria when talking about the NIT tournament.
Yeah.
That kind of sums it up.
Well,
right there.
I mean, look, the NIT is better now than it was many years ago, but it still makes you cringe because nobody wants to be in the NIT. But, yeah, he was making his pitch for the NIT, and he also said they're not going to go anywhere else if they are not picked for the NIT. They're not going to go to the CBA or the CIT or anything else that might pop up on the horizon for college basketball. Right. South Carolina, you're right. They missed some free throws, 10 of 16 compared to Arkansas, which was much better at the line in terms of numbers and percentage, 23 of 26. But two things stand out in my mind about where it got away from the Gamecocks. Number one, the technical foul on Martin late in the first half, I think it was, sort of near the first half. It gave Arkansas a 4-point trip to the foul line, and they knocked down all 4. That helped them to extend the lead and take a comfortable 8-point lead into the break. And then late in the game, the Gamecocks are back within an eyelash, I think maybe a basket away. They're playing great defense, and they've got Arkansas in a position up against the shot clock, and I believe it was Barford hit about a 35-footer that probably bounced off of Mars and came and found the basket. I mean, that was a back-breaking basket for the Gamecocks when he made that shot.
Yeah, they were standing around, moving on, very little cutting and setting screens, just kind of going around, and all of a sudden it was like Barford looked up, said, "Oh man, hey, there's 1 second left." He threw up a prayer and it went in. And then you're right. Late in the first half, I believe, I'm trying to look right now at the actual play-by-play, but I want to say that they went, Arkansas that is, that they went 4 minutes and 53 seconds where they didn't score a field goal at the end of the first half, and it was all free throws. And they scored 8 or 10 points of free throws in the final 5 minutes of that first half, and they took an 8-point lead. You're right. Those were the 2 key moments of that game because it was still pretty close at that point, and I'm not sure why Frank Martin decided to get teed up at that point. I mean, I think you've got to show some control there because the game isn't really out of hand. As poorly as South Carolina played that first half, you're still hanging around. And, that was just a poor decision to get teed up there. I think you just got to bite your tongue and get into halftime and kind of lick your wounds. So, plus he had Silva on the bench for quite a while, and South Carolina actually, kind of cut into that lead a little bit. So I thought they were kind of turning the corner there, and that those tees and the free throws late in the first half certainly put them in a hole that they just couldn't recover from.
Billy, I'm curious of your perspective here. Just getting a small sample size of these Gamecocks. I know those of us who watch them on a regular basis have kind of drawn our conclusions already on this team, at least for this season, and have looked towards the future. Do you see a bright future for this ball club with the small sample size you got over the last couple of days?
Yeah, I mean, there's flashes of where they look really good, but it's the and I don't know if that's the youth or them being young. That's why I was going to touch on this too. While nobody wants to go to the NIT, I think for this team to be able to play a few extra games and to be able to play with each other, I think that that would certainly help them moving forward. And I just think that you spend more time with Frank Martin, you're going to get better. So yeah, there's flashes. It's not like this team is a total disaster. There's times where they look good, but I think their inexperience shows quite a bit. And when it happens, it seems like it snowballs. And listen, I've been a part of that for a couple of years here in Missouri, watching the Tigers, and they look very similar to the way that South Carolina looks. So in terms of making those mistakes, trying to get yourself out of a hole. So yeah, with a little bit of time, a little more work, and I think a couple NIT games that could certainly help moving forward from this year.
Yeah, I think that if they get the opportunity, obviously they said they would take an NIT bid, and that would be to their benefit. Okay, so today Alabama just put the butt kick on Auburn, and of course Kentucky did their thing, but Alabama now all of a sudden Sexton's playing out of his mind. And you gotta sit up and take notice of Alabama and what they did today.
Yeah, well, they were on Thursday. They were less than 5 seconds away in a 94-foot drive from coast to coast of being knocked out of this thing. And so you eke out the victory there against Texas A&M. You come out huge in the second half, and now all of a sudden you've got some momentum. And Kentucky, yeah, they did what they were supposed to do. I think they ran into a tired Georgia team that, seeded 12th. They weren't tested. I think Avery's going to get this Alabama squad ready for Kentucky. That's going to be a great game tomorrow at noon.
All right. And what do you think about tonight's matchups?
Well, I like Tennessee. I don't know how they slow down Admiral Schofield. He had a great game. He had 24 points when these two teams met back in late February. The Vols just dominated that game 76-54, so I don't anticipate any issues there. And Florida, I think Florida can handle Arkansas. I know Arkansas got the win last night, but they really didn't impress me at all. And I think if they can take care of the basketball, slow that game down a little bit, I think they'll have their way with Arkansas.
Well, we want to thank you for your help and your coverage. And look, I want you to take the rest of the weekend off.
Well, one thing we're going to do is go to a watch party Sunday evening to see where the Missouri Tigers end up in the NCAA tournament. So
that would be our Missouri Tigers. And give our best to the fine athletics director at Missouri. We wish him well.
I will say hi to Jim Sturk. And, I saw Ray Tanner last night, and I was thinking about what you said. I thought, I could walk up to him and say, hey, on behalf of Jim Sturk, I just want to apologize. I thought after the loss, maybe I'd better not do that. That might not go over well.
Smart move.
But I do want to say one thing real quick, though.
10 seconds.
I do want to thank all of your fans who followed me on Twitter last night as I was on your Twitter feed at Sports Talk, and had some great interaction with them, and really pleasant, and I had a fun time.
Yeah, and corrected every one of your typos. Thank you. Have a great weekend. We'll be right back. Welcome back into Sports Talk, everybody, here on a Friday night. Phil Kornblut from the capital city, Columbia, South Carolina. Brian Leonard behind the bulletproof glass. Will Pelagic is up in New York, in Brooklyn, waiting on Clemson and Virginia at the top of the hour. We just signed off with Bill Pollock from St. Louis, so we've been covering the two big tournaments for you all week long. Hope you've enjoyed it. We certainly have enjoyed bringing it to you. Now it is time for an outside opinion with Morgan on the Move here on Sports Talk, somebody who knows a thing or two about the basketball activity in both of those leagues, the SEC and the SEC. Mike, brought to you by BP Skinner Clothiers, where people nationwide get their custom-made suits and accessories from Brent Skinner. Very best in suits, shirts, pants, shoes, and more right here in Columbia in the Vista. If you can't get to them in person, check them out online at bpskinnerclothiers.com to set up an appointment. And brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union, where their mortgage team is more equipped than ever to help you with the mortgage process. Whether you're buying or refinancing, visit foundersfcu.com/mortgage to apply today. All right, so we'll just toss you the ball and let you give us your thoughts on the ACC first, since they're going to the semifinals, and the SEC, which is moving into the night version of the quarterfinals.
Well, I think the biggest difference between the two leagues, at least from my standpoint, is that I look at the ACC, and while they might get a very high number of bids, as many as 9 being tossed around, to me, there's only 3 teams that I feel really good about winning that event. It's the winner of North Carolina Duke tonight, and it's Virginia as a possibility. I don't see anybody else that I feel is a great threat to win it. Could be wrong, but that's just the way I view that league this year. I just think those programs are a cut above it. And if Duke keeps playing the way they're playing, I mean, the way they played yesterday, where Grayson Allen's hitting shots and Bagley looks motivated and everybody's clicking, to me, they're the best team in the league and the best team in the country.
Well, do you think Clemson's just a pretender?
No, I didn't say that at all. I just don't think they're in the same category as the 3 teams at the top. I mean, let me put it this way. If I said, does Duke have a chance being a Final Four team, you'd say yes, correct?
Correct.
If I said Virginia has a chance to be a Final Four team, you'd say yes, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and if I said Clemson looks like a Final Four team, what would you say? Forget about the fact you're on in South Carolina. What would you say?
Well, having watched them a lot, I think anybody who's watched them a lot would say yes. When you've got 3 guards like they have who can dominate the basketball and score from any part of the floor, the way they can play defense with a big man who can run the floor, block shots, and score and rebound, and a developing bench, yes.
Right. Okay. Well, look, I've been high on Clemson all year long, and I think Coach Brownell's a great coach. I'm just telling you, I don't think they're a Final Four team, particularly with the loss of Grantham and everything else. So
sure.
There's a chasm of real estate there between whether or not they're a Final Four team versus a pretender. And I'm saying they're neither. I'm saying they're right there in the middle. They're going to be a very legitimate seed. I think they could win some games. It's been a while since Clemson's been in the Sweet 16, right? I think they're certainly that good. I just don't think they're Final Four good, and I don't think they're Duke good. So if that's controversial, call me controversial.
Mr. Controversial.
Yes. Yes.
All right, so who do you see cutting down the nets tomorrow night?
You're talking? Are we still on the ACC?
Yes,
I think right now Duke is the team. I mean, obviously they got to get through Chapel Hill tonight on a neutral floor, but like I said, if Duke continues to play the way they are, I think they're the hardest team to beat in the country. So I wouldn't back off that statement at all. You know, where I was heading on the difference in the SEC is that I still believe there's more than a couple teams that can win this tournament. You know, Kentucky would be my favorite, and I know that's a pretty boring pick, even though they're not even one of the top 2 seeds. The number 1 seed, of course, Auburn got bounced today. I think Tennessee's good enough to win it. I think Florida's good enough to win it. I think Arkansas is good enough to win it. I just think there are more teams that have a chance to go the distance. The difference between the SEC and the ACC to me is I'm not sure if there is a Final Four team in the SEC. As much as I've pumped up this league, and I think it's a historic year, with Alabama's win today, the SEC is a lock to get 8, and I think that is a huge, huge statement for a conference that went through the doldrums not long ago. This league is better than ever, deeper than ever, and it's not going anywhere. This is not just an outlier. Whereas the ACC, I think there are multiple teams that could win a national championship. But I'm not sure, quite frankly, even though they might get as many bids, if not more, I don't really see the same amount of quality teams in the middle in the ACC as I do in the SEC.
Do you see, Mike, a little bit of Cinderella in Alabama, kind of playing that role of UConn in the Big East tournament a couple of years ago, with Colin Sexton playing the Kemba Walker role?
It's possible. I'll tell you this: if they bounce Kentucky tomorrow, everybody will be on that bandwagon. How this team lost 5 in a row is still a mystery to me and many others. I did a couple of those games that they lost in that losing streak, including they got blasted by Auburn in Auburn. They got beaten pretty badly by Arkansas on their own home floor. And it was kind of like, where did the offense go? You got a lottery pick guard, and Sexton might be the best guard in this league since John Wall. And you've got bigs, and you've got this, you got that, but they just weren't playing well. They have figured it out. And look, they are a miracle shot away from Colin Sexton yesterday of playing in the NIT. Mm-hmm. Now we're talking about the chance that they could be the spoiler and win the whole thing and be a team that's going to be very formidable in the NCAA tournament. Sometimes that's just how thin the margin is from a good season versus a disappointing season. But yeah, Sexton is special. They can defend. Dante Hall's a good shot blocker. There's a lot of things to like about Alabama, but they're still going to have a very difficult opponent in Kentucky tomorrow.
What about tonight's games? Who do you see moving into the semifinals out of the 2 games coming up tonight?
Tennessee beats Mississippi State. I think Arkansas-Florida has the chance to be a really good game. I would take Arkansas as a favorite in that one. I still am concerned about Florida's lack of size down low, particularly against a long and big team with a kid like Gafford for Arkansas. So I would take the Razorbacks in that one.
All right, shifting gears to another team in our state already locked into the tournament as well. We know Clemson's a lock too. College of Charleston won the CAA tournaments. They are a top 60 RPI. They've got 24 wins, projected to be a 14 seed. Can they surprise some people? Can they do what they did in the John Crest days when they would go into the tournament and beat people or just give people all kinds of headaches?
By the way, they got a coach who's being looked at by some schools and could be mentioned for a couple of SEC openings. Well, I'm sure you'll be covering that here in the coming weeks. But to answer your question, yes. I think it's a great story. I got to be honest with you. I'm surprised it's been since '99. That snuck up on me.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like that long ago John Crest was dancing and College of Charleston was winning. And, they've had other good coaches since then. That number just snuck up on me. I didn't think it was that long, nearly 20 years. But yeah, absolutely. Look, the Colonial, that is no joke of a league. The fact that they won it, the fact that they've got a hot coach, like you would know more about their personnel. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I've watched a whole lot of Charleston basketball this year, but the things that I do know about them, I certainly like.
All right, one last thing. Got about 40 seconds. Auburn's lopsided loss today, how does that impact them when the seeds come out?
They'll drop at least 1 line, maybe 2. I actually think, as crazy as this sounds, it could be the best thing to happen to Auburn because it is a team that very much looks like it's hit a wall. They need those extra days to regroup, get rested. They're already shorthanded. They're already small. They needed that more than they needed a higher seed.
Yes or no? 10 seconds. Do you like the new idea of releasing all the schools alphabetically and then putting them in a bracket?
Absolutely not.
Yeah. I hate it.
So do I.
Why do you mess with the best thing on television in basketball? Why do you mess
Turner's
with
trying to be creative. That's it in a nutshell, trying to be different.
Thank you, Mike. Have a great weekend.
Okay.
Morgan on the move here on Sports Talk.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Thanks again to Mike Morgan for being with us. Yes, we haven't talked about this, and I mean, I understand change, and you kind of do things to fit your times, and the millennials of today, you know, they have the ability to focus for about 15 seconds on things. So I understand that television likes to do things for those mush brains, but come on, you got the best thing in sports, really. Is there anything better than Selection Sunday outside of games? Anything better, more dramatic than Selection Sunday when the bracket pops up in a particular city and they put the teams in there and you wait for your team to come up? If it doesn't come up in the first bracket, maybe the second bracket, maybe even they fool you by putting the acronym USC up there, thinking it's people think it's South Carolina when it's actually Southern Cal when the Gamecocks got screwed a couple of years ago. My point, Willie P., is they're going to give you in the first 10 minutes of the show all 68 teams, and then they're going to put them in the brackets.
I love it.
So as soon as number 68's posted, you know, I'm turning the channel. Boom.
Fine.
I'm done. I'm out of here.
I have no problem with it because here's the problem. CBS and Turner had taken that thing and gone way too far the other direction and trying to drag it out for an hour where you're waiting for the whole bracket to be unveiled. I want to know. I want to know who's in and who's not, and I want to start filling out my bracket right as the selection show starts.
Typical. You got no patience. You got no focus. Of course, they probably figure, like it happened a couple of years ago, somebody in the mix there is going to leak it to Twitter, put it out on Twitter before it gets out anyway.
I mean, it's in my mind, anything that increases the interest and keeps people, because here's the thing.
How does this increase interest?
Because of the fact that people will be watching during those 10 minutes. They'll get more viewers for those 10 minutes than I'm sure they will have for the hour that people are just kind of, dozing off and not necessarily.
I disagree.
It's about actual, like, engaged listening.
The last time
viewing.
The last time TBS did Selection Sunday, as I recall, it was a complete blow up. The host didn't know anything about the schools when they brought in Charles Barkley. They brought in some of their NBA guys. They didn't know anything about the schools because they deal with the NBA all year long.
They still do that, and they'll still do that. I mean, that's
it's going to be terrible. It's going to be terrible.
That's the problem with them doing that. But I have no problem with it getting out as quickly as possible. I love that.
Yeah, I hate it. All right, go back and eat your knish. It is time to. You got to have a knish if you're up in New York. Last night, South Carolina saw its hope for an NCAA tournament spot, an SEC tournament championship, come to an end with that loss to Arkansas, 69-64. It was a winnable game for South Carolina. In fact, the Gamecocks outscored the Razorbacks in the second half, 36-33, but could not make enough big plays. It's not so much offensively. They couldn't come up with some rebounds. They couldn't come up with some defensive stops, and then they turned it over with just some really poor execution. Here is Frank Martin talking about really those kind of mistakes they made last night that cost them the game have cost them all season.
No problem all year. It's not a new book. It's not a different chapter. We've been stuck in that chapter. Come out of a timeout, can't execute what's called. Next possession, we'll make a different call. Can't execute that either. In the story all year.
Yeah, Frank, you guys blown out by Arkansas just last month, and then now making it a lot closer of a game. How has the team matured and, I guess, grown over that time?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with you. We got blown out. We're in a 6-point game with 8 minutes to play. We ended up giving up some baskets there at the end that made it a 14-point difference or something like that. I think we're down 1 at the half, so I don't know if I agree with us getting blown out. Florida blew us out. Missouri blew us out. We've gotten better. We're a better team. We've played well coming down the stretch. At this time of year, when you play in March, if you want to have a chance to win, every game's going to be like that. It's going to come down to making the simple play, being able to execute, being able to be on the same page. There was a 2-point game and there's a loose ball underneath our basket. It's a big scramble underneath their basket, excuse me. The ball's right there. All Wes Myers has to do is get on the ball. Now it's our ball, down 2. Let's go down. Let's see if we get a chance to tie it, take a lead, whatever. He don't come up with it. He just stands there and looks at it. They come up with it. Now we foul. Now it makes it a 4-point game. And, we're a better team. To your question, we're a much better team than we were a month ago. But we're not quite good enough to win tonight.
Tonight, Coach, just you had Gravitt on the bench for the first 15 minutes. Obviously, Naya got 3, 2. How much, if at all, did the foul issues really take you out of anything you were trying to do?
It's hard. It's hard. You got to manage that. Get no consistency. I don't think our guards – did our guards attempt a free throw? Wes, 0. Hassani, 0. Justin, 0. It's hard. Their guard shot combined probably 20 free throws. Ours didn't shoot any. We need them to be more aggressive and they're just a little passive. But it's Heath, at the end of the day, they all got their minutes. We didn't produce. We had 19 turnovers, 10 of them steals. Against Arkansas, that's a big problem. That's the difference of the game.
Frank, I don't know how much this is your decision, but obviously postseason play, will you guys accept an NIT bid if it comes your way?
Yeah, our RPI, we're above 500. RPI, Arkansas's RPI was like 30 or something like that. Neutral court, so our RPI was in the high 60s, if I'm not mistaken. RPI might even get better, even though we lost today. That's crazy as that. You lose a game, your RPI gets better. So from an RPI standpoint, strength of schedule, good wins, quadrant wins, we're above 500. I know teams with RPIs in the 80s and bad losses have gotten into the NIT. We fit the criteria to be able to, but it's not my decision. I don't want to speak for Coach Tanner, who's sitting back here, but the NIT invites us. We've signed paperwork. We'll go. Outside of that, we're good. We stay home if we need to.
All right, Frank Martin from last night. Now, looking at the NIT, couple things here to note. Of course, teams from the one-team leagues that win their league championship but don't win their tournament championship, they're guaranteed a spot in the NIT. So that eats up some spots. Number 2, the committee only looks at Division I results. And South Carolina, on its record, has 1 win over a Division II team. So the Gamecocks, what are they, 17-16? That really puts them in terms of their games against Division I foes at 500, 16-16, which is that qualifies you. You have to have at least a 500 record, but does not look as good in front of the committee. But then there's this other point that the committee has to consider when looking at NIT teams, and that is the committee shall select the best available teams to fill the NIT field. And, Will, I still have to think, with the reputation after making the Final Four last year and playing a lot of teams, good teams, close, maybe not winning all those games, I still think South Carolina should be in the NIT as one of the 32 best teams available, subtracting those spots that go automatically for those champions who didn't make the NCAA tournament.
Depends on who's still available, Corn. Again, I think it'll have to see exactly who's available, like you said, when they get done with all the stuff involving the teams that are on the bubble and things of that nature. Like you said, Alabama making its run to the SEC tournament could knock down somebody else, who's on the bubble. And that's one of these things that continues to be something that befalls this selection process with the NIT.
Okay, well, we'll hold our breath and wait for the NIT announcement late on Sunday night. Coming back, we've got a lot of stuff, including recruiting. JT eBay has made his decision. We'll give you his details coming up.